What if the future of our planet was being built in Massachusetts? Not California, not Berlin, not Beijing, but Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville. From carbon-sucking machines to climate-hardened crops and next-gen battery tech, Massachusetts is quietly becoming one of the most powerful climate tech hubs on Earth. Let's explore how this relatively small state is punching way above its weight and leading the fight against climate change. The climate clock is running out. Let's not sugarcoat it. The planet is in crisis. Global temperatures keep breaking records. Emissions? Still climbing. Fossil fuels? Still the dominant energy source. Meanwhile, climate-related disasters like wildfires, floods, heat waves, and hurricanes are not rare anymore. They're routine. What used to be once-in-a-decade events are now showing up in the news every month. Entire regions are choking on smoke. Coastal cities are seeing more once-in-a-century storms every few years. Crops are failing under heat stress, and water shortages are no longer just a developing world issue. And here's the hard truth. We are running out of time. Climate change isn't a distant threat. It's here, it's accelerating, and the window to avoid irreversible damage is closing fast. To avoid catastrophe, we need more than tweaks or band-aids. We need a fundamental shift, a revolution in how we produce energy, how we build cities, how we grow food, and how we live. We need radical innovation solutions that aren't just theoretical, but scalable, global, and immediate. And that's where Massachusetts steps in. This small state is punching way above its weight, channeling cutting-edge science into tangible breakthroughs. From revolutionary battery storage to carbon removal tech, from sustainable agriculture startups to climate-resilient infrastructure, Massachusetts is proving that when innovation meets urgency, change is not only possible, it's happening. This isn't just local progress. It's a model the world desperately needs. Inside Massachusetts' innovation storm. So why Massachusetts? Because it's not just a place, it's a pressure cooker of possibility. A convergence zone where elite academia, bold entrepreneurship, risk-tolerant investors, and forward-thinking public policies all collide. This state isn't simply participating in the climate tech movement, it's helping define it. Home to world-renowned institutions like Harvard, MIT, Tufts, and Northeastern. Plus, more than 100 research centers, Massachusetts is saturated with talent and ideas. Students, professors, and postdocs aren't just publishing papers, they're spinning out companies, filing patents, and building the tools we need for a carbon-free future. This is the birthplace of Moderna's messenger ribonucleic acid, mRNA tech, Boston Dynamics' robotics revolution, and CRISPR's gene editing. These aren't just success stories, they're proof of concept. Proof that here, breakthrough science doesn't gather dust in journals. It launches, it scales, it changes the world. Then there's the venture capital, billions in funding, flowing through a tight-knit, deep tech-focused ecosystem. Investors here aren't just writing checks. They understand science. They're in it for the long game. They're backing moonshots that could shift the course of the climate crisis. It's the Silicon Valley of science. But unlike the West Coast's app-driven culture, Massachusetts is mission-driven. It's putting climate solutions front and center. Here, climate isn't just a cause. It's a market, a movement, a mandate. And the storm of innovation brewing here, it's not chaos, it's coordination, with climate at its core. Why climate tech can't survive without deep tech. Let's be clear, climate tech is not your average startup sprint. Unlike building a food delivery app or tweaking a social media algorithm, solving climate problems is not about quick wins or rapid pivots. It's not something you can hack together at a weekend hackathon. There's no move fast and break things when you're talking about grid infrastructure or global carbon levels. This isn't software, it's science. Real world, physical, high stakes, science. You can't test a new carbon capture system on Tuesday and launch it to market by Friday. You can't trial a next-gen battery or fusion reactor with a few lines of code. These breakthroughs take years, sometimes decades of research, testing, failure, iteration, and scaling. You need an entire ecosystem of minds, material scientists who engineer better, cheaper, more sustainable building blocks, biologists developing new enzymes to break down waste or store carbon, engineers turning lab ideas into real-world machines, policy experts shaping regulations and incentives to make adoption possible. And that's what makes Massachusetts so rare. It's one of the few places in the world where all of those people and institutions exist in the same square mile. That's the secret. Deep tech doesn't thrive in isolation. It needs proximity. It needs collaboration. It needs coffee-fueled arguments between scientists and investors, late-night breakthroughs, and policy wonks who understand the tech they're regulating. Massachusetts isn't just enabling deep tech, it's living it. And when science meets scale, that's when real climate solutions are born. Climate tech startups, turning Massachusetts into a global powerhouse. Let's talk results, not hypotheticals. Massachusetts isn't just breeding bold ideas. It's launching real companies with real-world impact. These startups aren't dreaming about climate solutions. They're building them, scaling them, and rewriting what's possible across energy, industry, and infrastructure. Take Form Energy for starters. This Somerville-based company is developing 100-hour iron-air batteries, a game changer for renewable energy storage. Why does it matter? Because solar and wind are great until the sun sets or the wind stops. Form's batteries can store energy for days, not just hours, helping stabilize the grid and making intermittent renewables reliable 24/7. Then there's Commonwealth Fusion Systems, born at MIT. While most of the world still treats fusion power like science fiction, CFS is racing to make it commercially viable by the 2030s. Their SPARC reactor could unlock virtually limitless zero-carbon energy. It's bold, audacious, and they're making serious progress. Boston Metal is another heavyweight. Steel manufacturing is one of the dirtiest industries on the planet, responsible for about 7 to 9% of global CO2 emissions. Boston Metal's molten oxide electrolysis process, it completely eliminates the need for coal. No carbon, no compromise, just clean steel. And Via Separations is tackling a less glamorous but massive emissions problem. Industrial separations, from food to chemicals and factories, all use insane amounts of heat to separate materials. Via's advanced membranes can cut that energy use by over 90%. Quietly revolutionary. These aren't sketches on napkins. They're lab-tested, venture-backed, and already scaling. Here, climate tech isn't a concept. It's a reality, one breakthrough at a time. When government and startups unite. In Massachusetts, the climate fight isn't left to chance or the invisible hand of the market. Unlike regions where innovation has to fight through bureaucracy or fill the gaps left by policy, here, the government is not just a regulator. It's a co-founder, a partner, a catalyst. This state is home to some of the most climate-progressive policies in the country. It's not just setting goals, it's putting serious money and muscle behind them. There's a legally binding 2050 net zero emissions mandate that forces every decision across energy, housing, transportation, and industry to align with a decarbonized future. That's not a suggestion. That's the law. State-sponsored climate tech accelerators like MassCEC are providing early-stage companies with grants, lab space, technical guidance, and connections to pilot partners. Translation: more startups survive the valley of death and actually make it to scale. Green bonds and infrastructure incentives are actively funding the physical backbone of a low-carbon economy, upgrading transit, installing EV chargers, expanding offshore wind ports. This isn't hypothetical infrastructure. It's shovel-ready. Massachusetts leads the country in clean energy investment per capita, meaning more dollars are flowing per person into the future, especially compared to much larger states. This alignment between government policy, academic research, and venture capital is rare. Most regions have one or two of those things. Massachusetts has all three, working in sync. That's what turns bold ideas into real systems. Not just prototypes, but pipelines. Not just vision, but velocity. MIT and Harvard, twin engines driving the world's climate tech revolution. When it comes to climate tech, MIT isn't just a player, it's the power plant. This university is arguably the single most influential climate tech engine on Earth. And it's not just because of the brilliant minds roaming its infinite corridor. It's because MIT is built to turn ideas into impact. Start with the MIT's Energy Initiative, MITEI, a powerhouse research hub, bringing together scientists, students, and industry giants to work on everything, from next-gen nuclear to grid decarbonization. Or the Martin Trust Center, where student entrepreneurs get coaching, lab access, funding, and something even more valuable, belief. The belief that they can tackle global scale problems with the tools they build here and now. MIT doesn't hide in the ivory tower. It partners with companies like Equinor and Commonwealth Fusion Systems to confront real-world industry-sized climate challenges. Students don't just theorize, they prototype, they test, and most importantly, they launch. Meanwhile, just across the Charles River, Harvard brings its own firepower, especially in areas like climate finance, planetary health, and global environmental policy. While MIT builds the tech, Harvard often frames the rules, the risks, and the resources needed to implement that tech at scale. Think climate economics. Think carbon markets. Think public health impacts of global warming. And the students? They're not just publishing in Nature. They're launching companies, filing patents, and sitting down with numerous VCs before graduation. Together, MIT and Harvard are more than just elite schools. They're the twin engines, powering the East Coast climate revolution. Designing the blueprint for a net zero future? This isn't just a scattered collection of labs and startups. It's a fully integrated ecosystem, designed from the ground up to support climate solutions that are hard to build, harder to fund, and absolutely essential. Massachusetts is going beyond research papers and prototypes. It's laying the physical, financial, and human infrastructure for a full-blown climate economy. Start with Greentown Labs, the largest climate tech incubator in North America, located in Somerville. It's not just a co-working space, it's a launchpad. It houses over 200 climate-focused startups, many of which began as class projects at MIT, Harvard, or Northeastern. These aren't SaaS platforms. They're building physical tech, wind turbine blades, algae-based fuels, carbon capture systems, thermal batteries. You'll see engineers soldering, testing, and welding. You'll smell the science in the air. Then there's The Engine, a venture firm and incubator built by MIT to support tough tech startups. These are companies that need years of runway, expensive lab space, and investors who understand that real innovation doesn't always fit neatly into a 6-month product cycle. You don't just need coders. You need welders, chemists, materials scientists, policy experts, and VCs patient enough to wait a decade for returns. And that's exactly what Massachusetts offers: a durable, mission-aligned system built to support long-term, high-impact climate innovation. This isn't about building the next viral app. It's about building the next clean grid, the next zero-emissions factory, the next planet-saving breakthrough. The Massachusetts startups thriving right now. Not all climate tech is created equal. Some of it is insanely hard, physically, financially, and scientifically. And that's exactly what Massachusetts specializes in: the toughest, most transformative corners of the climate puzzle. The areas where the risk is high, but the potential reward is planetary. Let's break it down. Energy storage. Massachusetts startups are tackling the Achilles heel of renewable energy: intermittency. Long-duration batteries, like those from Form Energy, and new forms of thermal storage are unlocking the ability to store clean energy for days, not just hours. Carbon removal. From direct air capture systems to mineralization techniques that turn CO2 into rock, companies here are finding scalable ways to pull carbon back out of the atmosphere and lock it away. Industrial decarbonization. Steel, cement, and ammonia account for a major chunk of global emissions. Startups like Boston Metal are using electrochemical innovations to clean up these essential industries. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. Grid intelligence. Smart grids need smart tools, hardware-software combos that balance supply and demand, optimize EV charging, and keep the lights on during wild weather swings. That's happening here too. Food and agriculture. Precision fermentation to make protein without livestock. Vertical farming to grow food with less land and water. This is next-generation ag tech, and Massachusetts is feeding the future. Ocean tech. From offshore wind development to kelp farming and marine sensors, startups here are tapping into the blue economy to fight climate change from the sea up. This is hard stuff. But if it works, it doesn't just disrupt an industry. It changes the planet, from Boston to the world. This isn't just a local success story. Massachusetts might be the launchpad, but the trajectory is global. Startups here aren't building for Cambridge or Boston. They're building for cities in Nigeria, for cities in Indonesia, and for the Arctic Circle. Because the climate crisis doesn't respect borders, and neither should the solutions. Many of the state's most promising companies are already partnering across continents. Think European utilities, deploying Massachusetts-designed grid storage systems, African solar microgrids powered by startup-built battery tech. Southeast Asian shipping hubs are retrofitting vessels with carbon-reducing hardware born in Boston labs. These aren't future goals. They're contracts, deployments, and real-world impact. Happening today. And it's not just startups. MIT's Climate Grand Challenges program has sent research teams to 6 continents working on problems as diverse as climate-resilient agriculture, methane monitoring in remote regions, and seawater-based hydrogen production. These teams are not just studying climate threats. They're engineering solutions and embedding them in real communities. The science may have been born in Boston, the code may be written in Somerville, the hardware may be prototyped in Kendall Square. But the impact? It stretches across oceans and time zones. This isn't climate innovation for headlines. This is innovation for humanity. Built locally, deployed globally. And Massachusetts is proving that a small state can drive planetary scale change. Can the state stay on top? Let's be transparent. The state is leading, but it's not without its cracks. Innovation is thriving, but it's not always easy to build here. For starters, the cost of living is sky high. That's tough on young founders, especially those bootstrapping hardware startups or fresh out of grad school. Renting a lab bench is one thing. Renting an apartment in Boston? That's a different kind of challenge. Then there's the limited manufacturing space. Climate hardware doesn't scale from a laptop. It needs floor space, welders, and machine shops. And while prototyping is strong, startups often have to leave the state to find affordable, flexible facilities for full-scale production. Regulatory red tape also slows progress. Large infrastructure projects, like offshore wind ports or new transmission lines, can take years to move through permitting. The intention is good. The process? Not always aligned with the urgency of the climate clock. And let's talk about equity gaps. Despite being a progressive state, Massachusetts still mirrors the national trend. Funding skews heavily toward white male founders. Black, Latino, and female entrepreneurs remain underrepresented in climate VC deal flow. There's another bottleneck: late-stage capital. While early-stage funding is strong, thanks to local angels, accelerators, and state programs, once startups hit Series B or C, the money often shifts to Silicon Valley or New York. That brain drain can weaken the very ecosystem Massachusetts worked so hard to build. Bottom line, if Massachusetts wants to stay on top, it has to scale smarter, with more inclusive funding, better infrastructure, and faster pathways from lab to market. Great ideas are not enough. They need room and support to grow. Why this blueprint could decide our future? The climate clock hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's ticking louder. To meet global climate goals, the world doesn't just need a few big breakthroughs. It needs 10,000 new climate tech startups in the next decade. That's not a hopeful suggestion. That's the math. Massachusetts isn't trying to do it all alone, but it's doing something just as important: building the blueprint. It's showing the world how to turn world-class research into real-world results, how to align policy, universities, capital, and talent into one cohesive, replicable engine for climate innovation. And others are paying attention. Countries and cities across the globe are studying what's working in Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville, and adapting it to their own regions. Because in the face of a planetary emergency, we don't need just one green innovation hub. We need thousands. Massachusetts lit the match. Now it's up to the rest of us to spread the fire cleanly, sustainably, and fast. This is the decade that decides the next century. Let's build like it. So the next time someone asks, where is climate change being solved? You don't have to look to Washington or Silicon Valley. Look to Massachusetts. Look to the lab where fusion tech is being built. Look to the startup turning CO2 into building blocks. Look to the student pitching a battery breakthrough that could power tomorrow's cities. If you enjoy learning innovation across all cities, like this video and subscribe for more stories at the edge of climate and deep tech. Tell us in the comments, what climate solution do you hope comes out of Massachusetts next? Thanks for watching. Stay blessed and stay curious.